Have you ever looked in a mirror and had the feeling that something there knew more than it should? That the reflection watches you and doesn't just reflect? This story begins with an old, rare mirror that should have simply been broken by time. But what it reveals goes beyond reality. If you enjoy mystery, suspense, and dark stories, subscribe to the channel now and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Prepare yourself, because after hearing what happened to Alicia, you might never trust what you see reflected again. Alicia was a restorer of historical artifacts at a private museum in downtown Atlanta. She was passionate about what she did, especially when dealing with pieces from Europe. One in particular arrived wrapped in old wood, lined with layers of thick fabric, as if someone wanted to protect the world from its contents, and not the other way around. When Alicia opened the box, she was speechless. The mirror was intact, even though it was over 200 years old. Its sculpted iron frame displayed Gothic symbols she didn't recognize, and the surface had a strange sheen, as if it were breathing. From the first moment, something bothered Alicia. When she saw herself reflected in the mirror, for a brief instant, her reflection smiled before she did. It was impossible, of course. She shook her head and laughed to herself, blaming tiredness. But that small gesture stuck like a thorn in her memory. The mirror was placed in an isolated restoration room, where Alicia could study it better without interruptions. She photographed, measured, and cataloged it, but she couldn't ignore the feeling of being watched. Not by the museum cameras, but by something within that glass. That night, Alicia decided to record a preliminary analysis of the mirror on video. She set up her cell phone on a tripod and started filming. While talking about the object's origin, she turned briefly and froze. On the camera screen, the reflection was still looking at the lens even after she had turned away. Her heart pounded. She looked back at the mirror. Everything normal. She reviewed the video. The reflection clearly moved independently. She turned everything off and left the room hastily, with the excuse that she needed air. For the first time in years, Alicia felt real fear at work. The next day, she tried to ignore what she had seen. Maybe it was a glitch in the video, maybe tiredness. She tried to convince herself, but the mirror was there, still waiting. At night, as she passed the hallway where the restoration room was located, she saw something that made her stop walking. The light in the room was on. No employee stayed that late. Alicia opened the door slowly, expecting to find someone, but the room was empty, except for the mirror, which was now positioned facing the door. Something she was sure she hadn't done. Determined to understand what was happening, Alicia took the mirror for an X-ray examination in the museum's technical sector. She found nothing strange inside. However, while carrying the mirror back, she heard someone whisper her name. She stopped in the middle of the hallway, holding the mirror tightly. She looked around, no one. But when she looked at the mirror's reflection, she saw behind her a figure that wasn't in the hallway. When she turned around for real, nothing. Only silence and the growing certainty that this was becoming too dangerous to ignore. What Alicia didn't yet know was that the mirror didn't reflect the present, but the inevitable, and that each image shown by it was a fragment of something that was yet to come, something she couldn't avoid, only witness. And this revelation would come soon, in the most terrifying way possible. The next morning, Alicia decided to take the day off. She told herself she needed to rest, but the truth was different. She wanted distance from that mirror. She tried to distract herself by watching movies, going for walks, calling friends. But in every reflection she saw, shop windows, bathroom mirrors, turned off screens, something seemed off. Small delays in her movements, gazes that seemed to linger for a split second longer. Fear began to settle in like a slow, silent poison. That night, Alicia had a vivid dream. She was in front of the mirror at the museum, but this time the glass was broken, with a crack down the middle. On the other side, her reflection was no longer her own. It was an identical woman, but with completely black eyes, who was banging hard on the other side of the glass, begging to get out. When she woke up, gasping for air, she realized she was standing in the hallway of her apartment, in front of the closet mirror, her hand touching the glass, without remembering getting out of bed. The next day, Alicia returned to the museum determined to put the mirror back in storage. But upon arriving at the restoration room, it was no longer there. Panicked, she checked the security cameras. At 3:17 a.m., the room lights turned on by themselves, and the mirror simply vanished from the image. No movement, no person. 1 second it was there. The next, it wasn't. The recording stopped for 3 minutes and then resumed, with the room empty. This was impossible. While searching for some explanation, one of the security guards called her. He said the mirror had been found, but not at the museum. It was lying in front of Alicia's house, in the middle of the garden. No one knew how it got there. The object, which should have been under maximum security, simply appeared in front of her residence without anyone seeing anything. It was as if the mirror had chosen to go to her. Alicia refused to touch it. She asked them to take it back, but when the guards returned to her house to retrieve it, the mirror had disappeared again. That same night, Alicia heard a noise coming from the living room. A light, metallic sound, like the tinkling of glass being dragged on the floor. She approached slowly, her heart pounding. And then she saw it. The mirror was there, leaning against the wall opposite the sofa, perfectly clean, shiny, as if it had just been restored. But she never brought it home. And when she looked at the reflection, her own face was there, but with one small detail. She was smiling, even without moving a muscle. She covered the mirror with a sheet, locked the living room door, and went to sleep with the lights on. In the middle of the night, she heard a sound of glass cracking. She ran to the living room and saw the sheet on the floor. The mirror now had a crack in the center, exactly like in her dream. Once again, her image was distorted, but now with completely black eyes, fixed on her, as if it were seeing something far beyond the present. Alicia recoiled in shock as she felt a presence behind her. But when she turned around, there was nothing, nothing visible. The mirror was trying to say something, to show something, and the more Alicia tried to get away, the closer it came. Not physically, but emotionally, as if it were taking root in her mind. What began as curiosity was now dread. And the worst part is that, deep down, she knew. This game wasn't about escaping. It was about understanding what the mirror wanted to reveal. And she was getting closer and closer to the truth. A truth that could change everything. The following morning, Alicia went to the guest room where she had locked the mirror. The door was locked as she had left it, but when she turned the handle, it was open. The room was empty. The mirror had vanished again. And on the floor where it had rested before, there were drag marks on the rug, as if it had been pulled by invisible hands. Alicia called building security, demanding to see the footage from the last few hours. But again, at the same time as the previous night, there was a power outage of exactly 3 minutes. Determined to understand what was happening, Alicia decided to seek more information about the mirror's origin. She searched the museum archives and discovered that it had been acquired through an anonymous donation from an isolated village in northern Romania. The accompanying document was confusing, handwritten in Old Romanian. She asked a professor at the local university for help with the translation. When she received the response, she felt a chill. The mirror was part of an ancient spiritual imprisonment ritual. It was called the Eye of the Void. The text said that the mirror did not reflect the present. It revealed the part of us that was forgotten, or that we wanted to forget. According to legend, anyone who looked at it for too long ended up losing connection with real time. They began to see fragments of another life, a life where something went wrong, a life that cried out to be remembered, and sometimes the reflection would take the place of the original person. Alicia tried to laugh at it, but the words echoed too deeply. It was as if they were speaking directly to her. In the following days, Alicia began to have blackouts, moments when she found herself in places she didn't remember going. She would wake up in front of the mirror, even though she was sure it was no longer in her house. One morning, looking at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, she saw a small scar below her right eye, but when she touched her own skin, she felt nothing. The scar wasn't there, only in the reflection. The next night, the scar appeared for real, exactly where it was in the mirror. Alicia realized she was living in two worlds, the real one and the one the mirror showed, and the two were beginning to collide. Dreams and visions began to overlap with her routine. Voices whispered her name as she walked through the house. Whispers coming from mirrors, from windows, from dark screens. One day, passing by the turned-off television, she saw not her face, but that of another woman. A distorted version of herself, with an empty gaze and a subtle, cold, calculated smile. It was then that Alicia decided to do something risky. She stood in front of the mirror for more than an hour, without blinking, without looking away. She wanted to understand, to see what was behind the image. And something, in fact, began to happen. The room behind her disappeared, giving way to a dark, foggy forest, where a ruined house could be seen in the distance. And inside it, someone was waiting for Alicia, someone with the same face, but with something missing in their eyes, as if that version knew exactly what Alicia didn't know about herself. The next night, Alicia dreamed of that house, and this time, she woke up in front of the door of her own real house, with mud on her feet. The streetlights were flickering, and the mirror once again was there, leaning against the front door, as if inviting her to come in. She was being guided, forced to remember something that had been buried. But what and why? The answer was getting closer. But did she really want to know? That night, Alicia woke up to the sound of a grandfather clock, but she didn't have one in her apartment. The sound echoed through the walls as if time itself was trying to get her attention. When she got up, she found damp footprints on the wooden floor, leading to the room where the mirror used to be. Upon arriving, it was in the center of the room, covered by a black cloth. The same cloth the museum delivered it with. She didn't remember bringing it back. She took a deep breath and removed the cloth, revealing the dark, dense surface like liquid pitch. Alicia stared at her own reflection, but this time, there was someone else in the background. A figure standing in the doorway of the room, only visible in the mirror. She turned around quickly. Nothing there. When she looked back at the mirror, the figure was closer. So close it seemed it could whisper in her ear. Alicia took a step back, trying to convince herself she was seeing things. But then, she heard, "Do you remember now?" The mirror was reacting to her memories, or the ones she was trying to avoid. Alicia began to write down the dreams, the lapses, the disconnected images. Little by little, a pattern emerged. All involved the same old house, the dense forest around it, and a crying child. In one of the dreams, she saw herself as a teenager, running through trees, carrying something wrapped in cloth. Young Alicia's face was panicked. But the most frightening thing was what she heard echoing in the dream. "You promised to forget." Determined to understand what the mirror wanted to show, Alicia obsessively searched for abandoned houses near the region of the village where the mirror had originated. After days of research, she located one that matched exactly the vision from her dreams. She booked a flight to Romania. The road leading to the village was winding and shrouded in thick fog, as if time didn't flow there. The locals avoided looking at her. Some made the sign of the cross as she passed. The house was where it should have been. Isolated, surrounded by twisted trees, with windows boarded up and the door ajar. She felt the floorboards creak under her feet as she entered. Everything was covered in dust but intact, as if waiting for her. In the center of the room, on a stone table, was another mirror, identical to hers, but with a deep crack that ran across the glass like a scar. Alicia approached slowly, and when she looked, she saw something that paralyzed her. A forgotten memory. It was a childhood memory. Her there, in the same house, hidden under the table, while screams echoed. A woman, her mother, arguing with a man, and then silence. Alicia slowly came out of hiding and saw the woman's body lying on the floor, and the mirror, fallen beside it, stained with blood. Young Alicia approached, touched the mirror, and everything dissolved. Alicia woke up in a cold sweat on the floor of the old house. But the memory was now too vivid to be just a dream. Returning to the hotel, Alicia noticed something strange in her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Her eyes were darker, deeper, and, For a moment, she didn't see her own room in the background, but that of the old house. Time was collapsing between the two versions of herself. Something had been opened, and she no longer knew what was real. The only certainty was that that house and that mirror held something she needed to remember before her own version from the other side took complete control. Alicia began to realize that her memory lapses weren't simple forgetfulness. They were swaps, as if pieces of her consciousness were being replaced by something ancient. One night, while reviewing her notes on the mirror, she found a sheet written in her handwriting, but which she didn't remember writing. "She's on the other side, waiting." That was all. No date, no context. But upon touching the paper, she felt a shiver run down her spine. She decided to return to the house one last time. It was as if something there was still incomplete. This time, she took the mirror she had received by mail. She placed it in front of the cracked mirror in the house. When the two aligned, a vibration filled the air, as if the environment were holding its breath. Alicia felt her throat tighten. Her flashlight flickered, and everything around her darkened. A low sound of something scratching wood started behind her. When she turned around, no one was there, but the mirror now showed two reflections of her. Alicia and the other. Same face, but with an empty, dark gaze, as if there was no soul there. The other Alicia smiled slowly, and the smile was completely wrong. It was like seeing herself dressed in her own death. The Alicia in the mirror raised her hand and pointed to something behind her. When she turned around, she saw nothing, but she felt it. Presence. An absolute cold, as if a door to the void had opened. The house began to shake. The floor gave way beneath her feet, and she fell. She awoke in a place that looked the same, but at the same time, distorted. The walls breathed, the ceiling pulsed, and the mirror was now a portal, showing scrambled images of the past and the present. She saw her own birth. She saw the house burning. She saw the figure of her mother being taken away by hooded men. She saw herself burying something in the garden of the house. She began to scream, begging to get out. But the more she screamed, the deeper she sank into that reality of inverted reflections. Alicia understood with dread that there was something buried in that house, something that she herself as a child had helped to hide, and that the mirror somehow was the key to remembering or keeping it trapped. In the middle of the night, she dug desperately in the garden, guided by flashes of the distorted vision. After hours, she found an old metal box. Inside it, there was a child's dress, stained with something dark, and a necklace. The necklace she had seen around the neck of the crying child in her dreams. She collapsed to the ground, feeling a deep pain in her chest. The memory returned like an avalanche. The child was her sister, a sister who never existed, at least not in the records. An accident, an unreported death, and a promise made under childhood oath that she would never remember again. Her mother had used the mirror to seal the memory, but now that it had been recovered and reactivated, the seal was breaking, and with it what was buried along with the secret. Upon returning to the hotel, Alicia could no longer recognize herself. In the reflection, the other Alicia watched her, motionless. But now there was a crack in the mirror, exactly like the one in the house. The crack grew larger each day, and with it, the presence from the other side drew closer. She tried to lock the mirror away, cover it, even throw it out. But it always came back. It always reappeared in unexpected places, as if saying, "You're not done yet." The next morning, Alicia woke up with marks on her arms, as if someone had held her tightly during the night. But she was alone in the room. The windows were locked, the door bolts still intact. And yet, the mirror was there again, leaning against the wall opposite the bed, reflecting something that wasn't in the room. A girl, standing in the corner, wearing the same stained dress from the buried box. The image flickered for seconds, then disappeared. But Alicia knew. She was there. Desperate, Alicia sought help in the city's old archives. She discovered that in the 1960s, several children had disappeared in an area near the house she had visited. The records were vague, but all mentioned the same description. Dark-haired girls, all wearing necklaces identical to the one she had found. Pattern. And even more disturbing was finding her mother's name involved in an old organization that studied memory-blocking phenomena through ritualistic artifacts, as if she had been trying to erase something more than a simple family trauma. Alicia confronted the only living person who might know the truth, her maternal grandmother. Initially reluctant, the old woman eventually gave in. She revealed that her daughter, Alicia's mother, had been part of a silent cult that used mirrors as containment portals. When something very dangerous was released, it was sealed in the reflection of the witness, who would forget everything. But if the mirror was broken or removed from its original place, the seals would break. That's what Alicia had unknowingly done. And now, what was on the other side was almost free. The nightmares intensified. Alicia now saw not only the girl, but dozens of hooded figures, murmuring in languages she didn't understand. At the end of each dream, she saw herself in the mirror, but not as she was now. She was a child, covered in blood, holding the necklace and smiling. She would wake up drenched in sweat, the mirror in her room always more cracked, more distorted, until one night, she woke up to the image of the girl sitting beside her on the bed. Real, tangible, but when she tried to scream, there was no sound. She was trapped inside the reflection. She managed to wake up shortly after, as if she had been pulled back. But what terrified her most was finding a Polaroid photo on the bedroom floor. She was there, sleeping, with the figure of the girl standing behind her. Someone or something was trying to materialize the other side. What was sealed was now seeking to cross over. And the only link was Alicia. The mirror wasn't just a channel. It was an invitation for something very old to return. And that thing seemed closer and closer. Alicia decided she needed to return to the house. Alone. She felt the cycle needed to be closed where it had begun. As she crossed the property gates again, she realized it was no longer just an abandoned house. It was alive. The wood groaned even without wind, and the air felt thicker. She climbed the stairs with cautious steps, carrying only the necklace, the box, and a mirror covered with a black cloth. In the room where it all started, she removed the cloth and placed the mirror in the center. The reflection appeared immediately, the girl surrounded by the other figures, all looking directly at her. And then one of them pointed, not at the mirror but at the necklace. Alicia understood. The object was the anchor. As long as it existed, the connection remained. But when she tried to destroy it, something grabbed her from behind. Invisible claws dug into her skin. A force pulled her body towards the mirror. She screamed, fought, cried, until she remembered her grandmother's words. Only the origin can end the reflection. In an act of desperation, Alicia threw the mirror and the necklace into the fireplace, screaming her sister's name that she now remembered, Eliza. The fire quickly consumed the necklace and the mirror, spreading a thick smoke throughout the room. Alicia fell to her knees, feeling as if a part of her was being torn away along with the objects. The heat was unbearable, but she couldn't move. The smoke took shape before her eyes, and for a brief instant, she saw Eliza, not as the ghostly girl, but as an ordinary child, scared, crying, her gaze fixed on Alicia. And then, she vanished into the black mist that rose through the ceiling like a silenced scream. The house shook, the windows shattered, the pictures fell from the walls, and an invisible force threw Alicia against the wall. She hit her head, almost losing consciousness, but managed to get up, staggering. The room was in ruins. There were no more reflections, no mirrors, no objects. Only a dense and absolute silence. For the first time in weeks, Alicia didn't feel the presence. There was no longer the feeling of being watched. It was as if the spell had finally broken. But there was still a doubt gnawing inside. Was it really over? 2 days later, back in her apartment, Alicia tried to move on with her life. She threw away all the mirrors she found, covered the reflections of screens and shop windows. She stayed away from any surface that could show her image. Still, every now and then, she saw small distortions in the shadows. echoes of what she had witnessed. She started writing everything in a diary so she wouldn't forget again. She needed to be sure that if something returned, she would know how to recognize the signs. But there was something new that made her uneasy. Every time she wrote the name Eliza, the pen would stop, the ink would dry up, as if the name itself still had power. One night, while reviewing her notes, Alicia found a page she didn't remember writing. The handwriting was slightly different. The words were in red, as if written with dried blood, and they simply said, "You opened the door. Now she knows where to find you." A chill ran down her spine. She looked around, but she was alone. She turned on the living room lights, locked all the windows, and yet, the cold intensified. It was as if the world around her was slowly being sucked into something she couldn't see. As if the mirror had returned, only now inside her. That same night, she had another nightmare. But this time, she wasn't the one dreaming. It was Eliza. Alicia saw everything through her sister's eyes. She was locked in a dark basement, surrounded by voices that whispered incessantly. "She promised to free us." Eliza screamed for help, but no one heard. She woke up with a dry mouth and her face covered in small handprints on her skin, as if children had tried to pull her during her sleep. She ran to the bathroom to wash her face, but when she looked in the sink, she saw Eliza's reflection smiling in the mirror. Even though she wasn't there, Alicia decided to seek help from occult experts. She found a man known only as the Watcher, who lived isolated in the nearby mountains. He received her reluctantly, but upon hearing what she had experienced, his face turned pale. He said that what she had released was not just one spirit, but a convergence of sealed souls, united by an ancient ritual, and that Eliza was just the most fragile vessel. The mirror was the portal, but Alicia was the key, and once opened, the door only closes with sacrifice. A true one, the kind of choice no one should have to make. He gave her a warning. If you hear the whisper of your name coming from inside the mirror, do not answer. Never answer. Alicia returned home with more questions than answers. But something in her had changed. A constant presence, as if she were sharing her body with another soul. The dreams now came with greater clarity. And in one of these visions, she saw a child with black eyes holding a candle and saying, "Only one left. Just one more reflection." She woke up gasping, with blood coming out of her nose. She knew time was running out, and that the worst was yet to come. In the days that followed, Alicia began to lose time. Hours vanished without her knowing what she had done. One afternoon, she found the apartment door open, even though she was sure she had locked it. Inside, everything seemed intact, except for a mirror she didn't remember owning. It was hanging in the hallway, with an old, dirty frame, as if it had been taken from a forgotten basement. When she tried to throw it away, the object seemed stuck to the wall. She tried to break it, but the glass wouldn't crack. It was as if that reflection was there of its own will. Alicia started filming herself while she slept, trying to understand what happened during the hours when her mind went blank. In the first videos, only normal movements she would turn over, murmur. But in one of the recordings, around 3 a.m., the camera captured something impossible. Alicia got up with completely black eyes and went to the mirror. She stood there for exactly 13 minutes, whispering something incomprehensible. In the last second of the video, she turned directly to the camera and smiled. A smile she didn't recognize as her own. The recording left her in shock. She decided to leave the apartment, go to a hotel, try to get away from whatever that was. But in the new room, when she opened her suitcase, she found the same mirror inside. Impossible. She had never put it there. The glass was cracked now, and behind the crack, there seemed to be something moving. A small hand pressed against the other side, as if begging to get out. Alicia covered it with a sheet and threw it in the closet. But she knew that wasn't enough. The connection with Eliza went beyond the object. It was something ancestral, something that wouldn't accept being ignored. The next morning, she received a call. Unknown number. On the other end, only a child's breathing. Then, a voice whispered, "You're almost ready." Alicia hung up and threw the phone on the floor. Fear grew like a living shadow, gripping her thoughts, eroding her sanity. It was then that she decided to return to the orphanage where Eliza had lived, hoping to find some clue about what was happening. She needed to understand her sister's past to save her own future. The orphanage had been abandoned for years, but still stood on a hill covered in fog. The gate creaked as it was pushed open, and the sound echoed throughout the grounds. Inside, the corridors still held traces of interrupted childhood. Alicia found drawings on the walls made by children, figures with empty eyes, cracked mirrors, and a central figure, a girl with a necklace identical to the one Eliza wore. A note was stuck beside it. She promised to free us, but never returned. In the orphanage basement, she found what appeared to be the center of an ancient ritual. A circle made of ashes, symbols scratched in dried blood, and in the center, a broken mirror. As Alicia approached, she heard voices coming from the shattered glass. It wasn't just Eliza. There were other children there, trapped, screaming, crying. Some begged to get out, others wanted revenge. Upon touching the mirror, Alicia was sucked into a terrifying vision. A distorted version of herself, with black eyes, holding Eliza's hands. Behind them, dozens of broken reflections watched her. Back in reality, she fell to her knees on the basement floor, choking on tears. Now she understood. It wasn't just a family curse. It was a pact, a cycle. Someone, at some point in the past, had offered Eliza as an anchor to contain the souls. And when she died, the bond was broken, but not undone. Now, the souls needed another body, another reflection. Alicia realized she couldn't run. The only chance to end this would be to return to the place where it all began, the childhood mansion, and face the mirror one last time. Alicia returned to the mansion before dawn. The city still slept under a veil of mist, as if sensing what was about to happen. The front door creaked open with a sound that resembled a lament. Every step inside the house echoed old memories. The smell of damp wood, the sound of wind through broken windows, and an invisible presence that watched her closely. In the center of the room, the original mirror awaited her, whole, shining as if it were new. Alicia approached, feeling her heart beat out of rhythm. She didn't know what would come next, only that she needed to end it. She stared at herself for long seconds. In the reflection, her image was slightly delayed, as if the mirror hesitated to copy her movements. When she raised her hand, the reflection didn't follow. It smiled on its own. Alicia recoiled, but the mirror reacted with a crack. Fissures spread across the glass, forming Eliza's silhouette. The girl in the reflection stared at her, eyes empty but sad. It was as if she were pleading for help. Alicia reached out and touched the glass, and at the moment of contact, she was dragged to the other side. The world there was dark, cold, and seemed made of mist and fragments of memories. She walked down an endless corridor, where doors floated in the air, each showing scenes of her childhood with Eliza. But in all of them, there was something wrong. A shadow, a strange look. Alicia understood now. Her sister had been different from the beginning, marked by the mirror since before she could walk. The bond was too old to be broken easily. In the background, children's voices sang a song in unison. Mirror, mirror, show what you hide. One heart breaks, another replies. In a circular room surrounded by distorted reflections, Alicia found Eliza sitting, hugging her knees. The girl didn't seem scared. She seemed resigned. You came, she said in a low voice, but it's too late. Alicia begged her to come back together, that they would break the cycle. Eliza shook her head. Someone always has to stay. The logic of that place obeyed other rules. One soul needed to occupy the mirror for the others to be freed. All along, Eliza had been trying to prevent Alicia from meeting the same fate. Suddenly, everything began to collapse. The world around them trembled. Cracks opened in the floor made of shadow. The voices screamed. The reflections tried to escape their glass, scratching with invisible nails. Eliza pushed Alicia back. You can still choose. Alicia, in desperation, grabbed her sister, but was dragged back by an invisible force. She woke up on the floor of the mansion, alone. The mirror was now completely shattered, but there was something different. In the reflection of one of the shards, she saw Eliza smiling and waving, as if she were at peace. Alicia cried, but felt a deep relief. She thought it was finally over. She left the mansion with a broken heart, but certain that she had saved her sister. On the way back, she turned on her cell phone and saw that there was a new recording in her gallery. The video showed herself sitting in front of the mirror the night before, but something in her eyes was wrong. They were cold, empty. At the end of the video, the version of her in the reflection smiled and whispered, "Now I'm the one who stays." Alicia froze, and for the first time she didn't recognize her own face. She tried to see herself in the car's rearview mirror. The reflection was there, but it didn't copy her movements. The shadow within her had returned with her. Or perhaps, it only looked like her. The following days passed in a blur. Alicia tried to get back to her routine, but something was different. People looked at her strangely, as if something about her screamed danger. Animals recoiled when she passed, and the mirrors in her house began to fog up on their own, even without steam. She tried to ignore it, telling herself it was all trauma, a side effect of the experience. But at night, the dreams returned, and in them, Eliza watched her from the other side, increasingly distant, more faded, as if she were slowly being forgotten. One night, she woke up to the sound of footsteps in the house. She grabbed her cell phone and turned on the flashlight. The footsteps were coming from the bathroom. Her heart pounding, she approached the half-open door. The mirror was fogged up, and in the center was a phrase written with a finger. "You are not Alicia." She fell back, trembling. Looking at her reflection, she saw her face, but it didn't blink at the same time. A slight delay, and in the depths of her eyes, a familiar sadness, like Eliza's in that dark world. She began to suspect that maybe the exchange had happened differently. Alicia sought help. She told part of the story to a psychology professor at the university, saying she had experienced a dissociative episode. The professor, intrigued, asked to record an interview. During the recording, Alicia answered the questions calmly. But upon reviewing the footage, the professor noticed something terrifying. Alicia's reflection in the room's mirror was not synchronized, and at one point, the reflection smiled on its own, while the real Alicia kept a serious face. It was at that moment that the professor stopped the recording and never answered the young woman's calls again. With no one else to trust, Alicia isolated herself. She broke all the mirrors in the house. She lived in the dark with the windows covered. But even so, the reflections returned. On the screen of her turned-off cell phone, in the tap water, in the car window, always delayed, always watching, until one night, she woke up on the bedroom floor, with cuts on her hands and blood running down her arms. On the closet mirror, a new message: "She is awakening." She began to lose time, have memory lapses. She no longer knew if she was the original Alicia or the copy. In desperation, she returned to the mansion. She wanted to find answers or perhaps a way to reverse everything. But the house had been demolished. In its place, a luxury condominium was being built. No one knew anything about the previous construction, as if the past had been erased. Alicia tried to enter one of the apartments under construction and found a mirror on the floor, covered with a tarp. Pulling it away, she saw her own face, and this time the reflection smiled before she did. A whisper echoed in the air, coming from inside the mirror. "Now it's my turn to live." The glass cracked, but this time on her side. The story ends with Alicia staring at the shattered mirror. But there are no screams, no escape, only an absolute silence and one last image. The condominium's security camera shows a young woman leaving the building, apparently normal, but in the reflection of the revolving door, who leaves is someone else. A girl in a white dress, smiling. Alicia, or what was left of her, remained trapped somewhere between the reflections. And the one who left now lives among us. If you look closely into the eyes of your reflection tonight, you might notice a slight delay, or a smile that isn't yours.